Hi, welcome to Tech Takeaways, the podcast taking tech's largest challenges and turning them into bite-sized chunks just for you to enjoy. I'm your host, Jason Fitzgerald, and as ever, I'm joined by my dynamic co-host, Paul Stringfellow.
Am I not worldly wild like you were last time out?
That's me. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah. And I'm in all for the bite-sized chunks of tech goodness.
We just love serving them up.
Yeah, well, we love a bite-sized chunk. Who doesn't?
Good stuff. Well, in this bite-sized chunk, we're talking about mobile threat.
Yeah, we are.
So I think this is quite a good topic, really, because I think that the threat from mobile devices is often a lot overlooked, and people don't really recognise.
Well, I think actually, it's interesting because 30 seconds ago, this episode was going to be called Mobile Threat Detection. But Jace, you made a very good point around it's not actually so much the detection, it's the mobile threat. And we were talking as I chauffeured Jason and our head of marketing, Josh, to the. They were both going to sit in the back of my car. I just wanted to point out all I was missing was a little cap to get us here. But we were talking on the way up about kind of the way that mobile threat is a thing, actually maybe a thing that people don't necessarily take as seriously as they could do. So because mobile. You made a great point about kind of mobile is almost, when we talk about mobile, mobile phones primarily, I think we're talking about, when we talk about that kind of thing, that people are living their lives in mobile devices and they're so comfortable with mobile devices, it's often really easy to accidentally do something that you might not do sat at a laptop, sat in a corporate environment, because you might be more wary of potential threat. But actually, when it comes to mobile, because you're so used to that environment, and actually I'm just going to click on, and it's so much easier, I'll just click on this thing, or, which is why there's this real growth in very specific targeting of mobile devices, because I think partly because it is easy to make somebody uneasy, maneuver them into doing something that they might not normally do. It's much easier on a mobile device potentially. But there's also this piece that mobile devices are often far less well managed and protected than their kind of desktop, laptop equivalent. Yeah,
absolutely. I think also as well, attacks launched towards mobile devices. So when we talk about like mobile specific attacks, it's the likes of SMS, kind of coming through, click on the hyperlink. I'm contacting you from your bank, click on the hyperlink, or kind of QR code, scan the QR code, and it takes you off to a web page that you don't want to be on. But I mean, the nature of a mobile phone, it's on you all the time. I mean, where's your phone now? Over there. Yeah, so mine's over there as well, but normally it's in my pocket.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it's in my hand, while I'm out and about. In the supermarket, it's unlocked because I'm paying for shopping, or I'm looking at my shopping list or whatever. I'm not walking around with my laptop in the supermarket. I've been told off for doing that. But it's that kind of thing. If that text message comes through to you, 9 to 5, you might not see it because you're busy working or whatever. But if it comes through while you're in the supermarket, your attention's elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's probably more chance that it might succeed. And plus the time window's greater as well because you're using your mobile phone, isn't it? So what are we seeing in this kind of space? When we talk about the mobile threat, obviously people have got their company data on there. A lot of people now have got banking apps on there. They can access it. Fingerprint, off you go to your current account, whatever. So I think that people are more willing to put that kind of data on their phone because they want the convenience of it, isn't it?
Well, and that's why they're almost like not specifically, but they're the things that increasingly get a target. So actually things like banking apps, they're a real target for, smart cyber criminals. They are looking to get kind of under the skin of those applications to, almost do that man in the middle attack at a mobile threat level,
Right, okay.
And that's an interesting attack surface. I mean, you mentioned before QR codes. I was speaking with a vendor yesterday or the day before, actually about the complexity of QR code threats, because they're an easy enough thing for somebody to produce, but actually for security vendors, they're really difficult things to stop because the security vendor can't examine the URL. The security vendor, there's not something there for them to necessarily look at. So what you're starting to see, and the vendor I was, I'm sure they won't mention, I was talking to Checkpoint the other day, and they were talking about some investment they've made in that space where what they're actually doing is layering. So when somebody has a QR code, they're layering their own QR code over the top of it so that they redirect the users to themselves first. And then in the background, because sometimes these QR codes will be, will be perfectly safe when they're released, but they're weaponized later. So what they're doing is that they will do that kind of check there. Then in the background, in the sandbox, they will go and then run the real QR code before eventually redirecting the user to the location. Yeah. But it just goes to speak the threat. How many times do you see scan our QR code here to get access to our app or whatever it might be? So all of these kind of things are why there is that kind of specific threat, because one, they're quite difficult to spot. Two, there is sometimes, often a lot less security on that device. So, and potentially there's less, the apps can be less secure. So, and particularly if those apps get compromised, and we've already seen kind of risks that are presented by malicious applications finding their way into, the Google Play Store, the Apple App Store, and as much as these vendors are trying to make sure non-malicious apps get in there, malicious apps do. And once they're in there, often people will assume they're safe, and that's part of the risk. Yeah. So what are companies doing to tackle this? It's interesting what you say about the QR code. That overlay layer. That's not a new thing, is it? Being able to it's URL redirection, isn't it? So, if we look at kind of email filtering services, they do that already. They do URL rewrite, but it's the nature of the QR code being a visual thing that's hard to detect, isn't it? So is it a case of specialist software on the device? What are people doing to? Well, I think that we were just kind of talking before we recorded, wasn't we? I think that's part of the challenge with this. I think my view is that we talk to lots of companies, and lots of companies will spend a lot of time building security on their laptops, their desktops, and their servers, and rightly so. Yeah. But actually, often they will be less concerned about mobile, and sometimes that's because they don't control the mobile. So it's a bring your own device policy. So that presents a risk in itself.
I can come in off the street with my phone I've just bought and hook up to the network.
Yeah, and actually you as a, you as kind of an enterprise who's allowing that kind of thing to happen. And I'm not saying that bring your own device is a bad idea. It isn't. Yeah. But it does present risk. And actually one of those risks is, well, what if that person's has downloaded malicious code to that device and, some kind of app that they assumed was harmless, but it's got malicious code in, and then that code sat there, stealing data from your device, whatever it might be. Yeah. So I think that there is that. And there's this, organizations not that they're not taking this seriously, but they're thinking of mobile devices in a way they think about laptops and desktops, and not necessarily looking to apply controls in a specific way. So, so for example, they might look at EDR on their laptops and desktops. So, so drop an EDR client on, that will go back to a detection and response service, and they may well automate some of the responses to that. But actually on a mobile, they haven't done the same thing. Now, sometimes that's because the EDR vendor doesn't do that. Yeah. Some EDR vendors do, some don't. But actually companies on the whole don't necessarily think about that and go, oh, well, I'm doing EDR on my desktop because I've got Defender for Endpoint, so I've turned on Defender for Endpoint on my laptops, and I'm using that to pull together threat detection information and then do some kind of response. But I haven't extended that out to the mobile. So why haven't they extended that out to the mobile? And actually bad actors, these cyber attackers appreciate that and know that, that this is not a revelation to a cyber attacker because me and you are talking about it. They know that, which is why they then go ahead and target mobile.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things as well is, if we're talking iOS, the integration into an Apple phone is done in a different way to an Android phone. So, you see a lot of Android products targeted with antivirus, but you don't have that same level of antivirus engine on an iPhone. So when you download, we work with Sophos, when you download the Intercept X for mobile, it does do a certain element of kind of security hardening. So it'll check the network that you're connected to on Wi-Fi and give you some information about whether it's secure or not and that kind of stuff. But essentially, it's kind of checking the posture of your device, but it's not looking at whether the device itself is necessarily compromised. And I think that's a challenge with bring your own device, isn't it? We don't know what happened to that device before it gets to the network. And yet we're given that device potentially access to a corporate network or certainly to company data. If we're talking email, email's company data, isn't it? We've worked on projects previously, where we've taken a look at Microsoft Intune and being able to define policies for the applications itself. So, for example, in Outlook mobile, saying you can only access this account if the following conditions are true. The AV is on the phone, or if you're using an iPhone, it's up to date. Those kind of controls. So we're securing the data as opposed to the handset, because we can't secure the handset. It's not our handset to secure, to bring your own device.
Yeah, and that's that says it's a good example of where you can start to do a level of hardening at the mobile level. So those kind of application management policies. And there's different ways of doing it. Microsoft have their approach, but often you'll see MDM vendors will have an approach where they'll run those applications in a secure bubble, and when that user leaves an organization, for example, they can almost blow away that secure bubble, so all the data and apps go with it. But application management policies then is absolutely a way of doing that. So user logs into Word on the mobile or Outlook, you can apply some policies to the way Outlook works for that user on that device.
And it's things like being able to copy to the clipboard from the device. If we've got sensitive company information in Outlook, we don't want someone to be able to copy that and then sync it to their iCloud notes. It's sensitive company information. We can block that, can't we? We can build a policy up that blocks that. And
it's kind of two levels of security on mobile devices. So there's application security. So those apps that have been developed, how do you ensure that they are secure? And that's almost an episode in itself. And then there is, can I then secure what happens on the device to better protect it? So one of the things that you're seeing in those that mobile threat detection space, I suppose, is one of the things that you'll see is that, you can drop so you take somebody like, you talked about Sophos have a mobile threat detection capability. But if you take somebody who's somebody like a Zimperium, who's a specialist in that area, and that's all that they do. So what they'll do is they will drop their agent onto that device, and then everything that is executed on that mobile device gets executed within almost that Zimperium sandbox. So if there's a malicious link in an email, for example, it's capturing that malicious link at the time to ensure that mobile device, if all else has failed, by the time it's got to that mobile device, malicious code can't be executed on that device. And that's the kind of level that you can go to. But I didn't want to get too specific in this, other than I think just for people to consider the threat vector that is mobile devices.
Absolutely, yeah. We started with it. I think it's overlooked. The companies that we've worked with in the past, when we're looking at doing the cybersecurity projects, can you help me harden my environment? Can you help me be more secure? Can you help me manage these risks? Often, when you kind of ask, what are you doing about mobile phones? It's almost like, oh yeah, hang on a minute. What are we doing about mobile phones? And often there's this kind of to get often stuck in the middle ground between, do we fully manage the device or do we allow bring your own device? How do we do the middle bit? How do we manage the devices that are ours to manage, corporate devices that we issue to end users? And then how do we allow end users to be able to work productively off their personal device, but in a secure way? And
I would say actually that's almost my tech takeaway for the episode. Is to think about what you've just said. So if you're listening to this and you allow the use of mobile devices, whether you manage them or you don't, consider a couple of things. Consider, have you thought about the threat of how am I securing those devices connecting to my infrastructure? How am I then securing the data on there? And so how am I making sure that by giving that flexibility and allowing people to be productive, that I'm not putting my company at risk from doing so? So think about, how am I hardening that device? How am I securing what goes on? How am I making sure that my data, when it goes on those devices, is safe? So just take that thought and have that almost as your tech takeaway, I think.
Awesome. I think that's a great tech takeaway.
Well, you would, because you thought of it. So I think that's a great tech takeaway.
Delivered it well, though.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So we hope that you enjoyed this episode. To ensure that you don't miss any future episodes, there's a subscribe button just below. Give that a hit if you're watching it on YouTube. If you're using a different podcast app, there'll be a subscribe button in there. So catch us next week when we're doing episode 50-ish.
50 summits.
Yeah, 50 summits. Okay. See you next week.
Bye.